I just finished A Court of Mist and Fury, and I have a lot to say. I'm excited to share some thoughts with you. Hi, my name's Bea. Welcome to my channel. Mama needs to read some romance. Romance just like this fantasy. This book does something really cool. I don't know if I've ever seen it before. It takes what the previous book meant and completely flips it. It changes the definition of almost everything, it feels like, that happened in the first book. Now I want to go back and read the first one again. I had some expectations going into this. Everybody said, A Court of Thorns and Roses is good, but A Court of Mist and Fury is fantastic. And then when I started reading it, I was underwhelmed initially. Feyre is at the spring court and she's miserable. She's about to do this wedding and she has Ianthe who's sort of pushing her along in terms of like wearing dresses and what the wedding's gonna be like. And Tamlin's nice, but he doesn't really understand her. And it kind of reminded me of, I hate to say this, Twilight Breaking Dawn, where we've got Bella. I was like, okay, so Feyre's like Bella. She doesn't know what to do about this wedding and she's young and immature and blah, blah, blah. And then you have Ianthe who's basically playing Alice, who is, helping her along with this wedding. And wow, was this way more than that. I thought I was crazy or that I was just missing something in terms of like, I was not enjoying the beginning at all. I was like, this is Feyre's love of her life who is not letting her go out. She's wasting away. She's sort of miserable. It just didn't seem like the happily ever after that I was hoping for. And I almost thought about just quitting right there. I was like, okay, you know what? This is not for me. I'm not really interested in, I'm guessing the story is going to be like he discovers that he really appreciates her and that then they're going to love one another more or something, and then they'll have the beautiful wedding. I had no idea what it was in store. Oh my gosh. And it's funny, in my review of A Court of Thorns and Roses, I know I mentioned that I found the most compelling character to be Rhysand, which I don't even know if I specifically said it exactly like that because I was sort of wary of the idea of acting like the villain was the most compelling character, but he really was to me. So when finally Feyre is walking down the aisle to marry Tamlin, she's been miserable because she's not allowed out of the house. She's not allowed to really do anything. They just seem to be protecting her and she's just miserable. And she's asking in her mind for anyone to help her, and then Rhysand shows up. I was glad. I'll say that. And I thought, okay, this is going to be about Rhysand. And I'm here for it. I really was. So they go back to the night court, and quickly it turns into so much more than that. I mean, she does go back with him for a week at a time, and over time she starts to develop a trust with him. You realize that he's not a bad guy, that he really played a part. And as the farther that you get into the story, you realize just how deep a part he played. Eventually, when Feyre is back at the spring court, Tamlin and Lucien, who I really do like, I like Lucien very much. I felt badly for him that he's sort of this lackey who can't really do anything, and he sees Feyre more clearly than Tamlin does. It brings up a question too. Is Tamlin a bad guy, or is he just an anti-hero? Is he selfish? I don't know. I don't know that he's a bad person, but I feel like he's a weak and maybe self-centered person. And I still say that towards the end of the book too. He's not a villain, I don't think, but he's not a good guy either. Maybe he's the anti-hero. Anyway, when Feyre finally has had enough, Rhys basically, he and his cousin Morrigan save her from the spring court and brings her back for good to the night court and really the city of Velaris, which is this beautiful, thriving metropolis filled with art and music and food. And I mean, just picture the most beautiful city you've ever been to, and that's Velaris, but with fairies. And it's just so cool. And I adored the trust that is built between Feyre and Rhysand. Although I will say I did not love that Rhysand used her as bait for the adder at one point when they were in the woods practicing. So I wasn't thrilled with Rhysand in that he wasn't always forthright with her and what the plan was in terms of like with the Weaver, he was sort of testing her. With the adder, he was testing her. And I don't know if it's being alive for more than 500 years, you can see the bigger picture. I don't know if that's what that is, but that was the only thing really. Otherwise, I fell in love with Rhysand. I thought he was a gorgeous, I was gonna say human being, but fairy. Inside and out. I mean, he has sacrificed the things that he has seen and done for the people that he loves. I loved the cast of characters. Azriel and Cassian, who I continue to have a little bit of trouble telling the two apart, except that you know that Azriel and Moore are probably going to start something. There's something in the air, although Moore was with Cassian very, very briefly. And then there's Amren, who is sort of an enigma, and she was very fascinating. I liked her character as well. But I just really enjoyed the intimacy that slowly built, they call it the slow burn, I suppose, between Feyre and Rhysand. I think it needed to be as slow as it did so that people didn't feel like you were just sort of, like, oh, I like Tamlin. Oh, I like Rhysand. Oh, it really was a natural build. I absolutely believed how the trust developed into a friendship, into a love greater than everything. As the author would put it, greater than the world. There were some multiple times where anything was bigger than the world. I'm like, okay, that's pretty big. Talking about the intimacy, here's another question that I had. What is the difference between the bargain that Rhysand makes with her so that there's a connection between them, and then the mating bond that they have? Because they are fated mates, which, spoilers. The spoiler of all spoilers right there. He's been aware of her since she was human, probably years before she even went into Prythian. So they've been fated forever, I suppose, and now they're together. I loved how, the notes that they would share where the paper would vanish and then reappear with a pen. I adored that. I loved how they were able to caress one another through the bond. I just loved that. And I love that we had to wait until 5 million hours into the story. It's funny, I did read some of the book, but I was listening on, so if you have Audible, go to graphic audio is what it's called. And they have a version of this. It's not just an audiobook, it's a movie in your mind. And the love scenes are a little extra scandalous. There's a lot of sound effects. Sorry, but otherwise, it really was like a movie in your mind. And I'm like, this is getting further away from reading closer to a movie, but it was so fun. And the music was great and the sound effects were great. I mean, even Lucian's eye whirring, you could hear. It was really neat. So if you want to hear this book, again, I highly recommend the graphic audio on Audible. It's 2 parts, so it's 2 credits, but totally worth it. Lots of fun. Feyre calls herself a traitor. And the question is she a traitor? This is one thing I wonder from the first book. Did she ever really love Tamlin? And did he ever really love her? Or was part of this always for him sort of to convince her that she loved him so that he could save his people? I mean, it certainly seemed like if you need to have a human fall in love with you, don't you feel like it might be a little forced if it's like that important and maybe it's not just naturally developing? So when she called herself a traitor for falling for Rhysand, fated mates or no, I did honestly wonder how much of when she went into the mountain in the first book, I almost said movie, was because of an obligation. She had a sense of obligation because of all that Tamlin did for her family and what he'd done for her. He treated her well when people hadn't treated her well in a very long time. And I just wonder, what is the difference? Was it a sense of obligation or was it love? And I really don't know. But the more you go on, the more you feel like, okay, she and Tamlin are not a good fit. The tithe that he did with his people, the fact that they had to give things, I hated that. And then when you find out not all of the other courts even do that, it's like, okay, this is the closest I feel like Tamlin is especially becoming a villain and not just some self-centered, shallow, narcissistic kind of anti-hero. One of the themes that's woven throughout this book that I really, really enjoyed was just having faith in someone, and also in, I can't think of a better way to say this, just girl power, essentially. You get a sense of that the people that are more progressive are the ones that want the women to be able to fight. For example, in the Night Court, they have women being trained. There's been this historical thing where they would clip the women fairies' wings so that they couldn't really do anything. And I just found that heartbreaking. And I loved how under Rhysand, women are allowed to train if they want. And he found people at some of the training camps making the women do chores first before they would train to fight. And Rhysand says, no, they train first and then they can do chores. Because again, he sees the value in these women and wanting them to be able to work and not just do chores. And that's the other thing that was so beautiful about him and his faith in Feyre. He always felt like, okay, you're an equal to me. You do what you want to do. And I just love just the faith in females and the faith in someone's love, that you trust them to do what they need to do. You don't just tell them what to do. I really liked that. And I feel like I found that woven throughout the book. Same thing with there were no high ladies, but only consorts. I was taken aback when I found out that there were no high ladies, only high lords. I thought, well, that is quite a discrepancy. And then at the end of the story, when Rhysand says, she is the high lady of the night court. She will be at my side. She will not be just tending children and doing chores, which is, of course, what I do all the time, but whatever. I'm waiting to become a high lady of my house. Anyway, no, I just loved that Feyre gets to be high lady. Okay, I apologize. My kids just came in from the pool and my 2-year-old was not ready to come in, so please try to ignore that. I'm almost done. Bear with me. I loved the end. I thought it was epic when Feyre finally realizes that she, thanks to the Suriel, that she and Rhysand are actually mates. I didn't love that she broke away from him for a while because she was too upset about that, but I guess they wanted this epic coming back together. And I loved when they finally got to realize their feelings for one another and their passion for one another. I thought it was beautifully written. I thought it was well done. And of course, the very end I thought was insane. I actually had a little trouble following everything that was going on when they went up to Hybern so that she could take the books, use them to override the cauldron, but of course it had been a trap. All I could say is thank goodness when they winnowed back to the townhouse and Amran was like, what happened? Morgan gave her the quick spiel of what exactly happened. I'm like, okay, good. Thank you, Amran, for needing to know, and thank you, Morgan, for including every little bit and giving me a synopsis, because it was a little tricky to catch all of that. But Tamlin, so sorry, she just didn't want to come in from the pool. Tamlin made a deal with the King of Hybern to get Feyre back, and then Ianthe double-crossed Tamlin so that she could get the sisters of Feyre. And then the sisters, of course, become fairies, which I'm not sure why that's such a bad thing, but Feyre says it's a very bad thing. And then Lucien discovers he's mates with Elaine, Feyre's sister, which was so crazy. I love that Feyre pretended that Rhysand had sort of messed with her mind, so she was able to pretend to be with Tamlin so that the rest could go back and save her sisters. And Lucien knows now that something's going on, but Tamlin is totally, because again, he's shallow and selfish and self-centered. He doesn't realize that Feyre is playing a role. And so I love what Rhysand said. He goes, Tamlin has no idea that he just let the high lady of the night court into his home. And Lucien, I think, does know, but he may play along with Feyre because he wants to get back to Elaine. And Rhysand is going to do everything he can to fight and get back with Feyre. So it's left at a cliffhanger. Lots of action, lots of adventure. I give this book 5 stars. It was an epic adventure, and I can't wait for the Court of Wings and Ruin. The SJMAlong is going to be at the end of July, and then I know they're going to be doing more of this series later on. SJMAlong is with the Book Refuge. I just can't wait. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for hanging out with me. I'm sorry again for the children, but their daddy is giving them a nice bath, and they will feel better. I hope you're enjoying whatever it is you're reading. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.